This is GamesAtWork.biz, your weekly podcast about gaming, technology, and play. Your hosts are Michael Martin, Andy Piper, and Michael Rowe. The thoughts and opinions on this podcast are those of the hosts and guests alone and are not the opinions of any organization which they have been, are, or may be affiliated with.
This is episode 549, Dark Side of the Moon. Hello, everybody, and welcome again to GamesAtWork.biz, your weekly technology podcast. My name is Andy Piper. I am based in the west side of London in the UK, and across the ocean from me, but live in real time as we record, are my two friends, both called Michael, both somewhere on the west side of the Atlantic. Michael Rowe, hi, how are you?
Hi, Andy. Welcome back. And I am, in theory, west of London.
Yeah.
And enjoying my afternoon and get to have fun and talk tech with my two friends, Andy and Michael. Michael, how are you?
I'm doing great because I get to talk tech with my two friends, Michael and Andy. So
you're all so nice. Everybody's just nice to one another, aren't they?
Yeah.
I hate them all.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you know your space weather right now is elevated because of the risks around highest flares? There were 7 M-class flares. I did not know that. But now I do. And you know why I know that?
No.
You know why?
Because we have the mission tracker?
Because we have the mission tracker going on right now for the Artemis 2 flight. And as we're recording, it is time for the crew to wakey. I don't know what song that they were awakened to today, but it's day 3. They're going to have their morning conference in 2 minutes. Which we will not tune into, but it's nice to see this on the Artemis tracker where you can get all the info and know exactly where they are on the map between the Earth and the Moon.
It's really cool. I mean, again, I'm excited about this. Humans going back to the moon, or not landing on the moon this time, but spending time studying it closely, being up close and personal with it. In this case, slingshotting around the moon, going around the other side. And this is incredible. We first did this, 60 years ago? And we're doing it again, but now we've got all of this live, real-time information that I know that you could watch some things on TV before, but now we can see all of this telemetry data, the real-time, as you say, the weather, what the plans are. It's really phenomenal. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, I watched the launch slightly delayed because it had some stuff going on and was able to TiVo it, DVR it, and my mom pinged me during it saying, "Do you remember when I woke you up to watch the launch?"
Huh.
So as a little kid, I was virtually there then on the initial launch, and got to see another launch, again, slightly delayed, but yeah, amazing stuff. And I can't remember where we saw this link come in from, but when I saw it earlier this week, it was like, okay, this is going on my browser. It's constantly running, and I just love all the telemetry data that you get and the information and the timeline, and just like a really nice single shot to see everything going on. Very cool. And last night we had translunar injection. That happened.
Yep. Did you see that happen live?
I did not, because I was working.
Yeah, that was in the evening. So sorry that you were working so late into the evening. We had a watch party in Durham, which was really cool to see things go, and it was fantastic to have a bunch of different iPads and laptops all going at the same time, so that everyone could participate. And I've been marking the YouTube channel here as well, which is cool because it's giving 24/7 broadcast coverage from Mission Control. Last night they had I'll call it televised, I guess, if you call it YouTubeized, interviews with all of the folks on the capsule, and it was just amazing to see that, watch the microgravity, microphone being passed around between all of them. How cool is this? Not like the 1960s at all, right. Or the 70s or the 80s, where you had to have special breaking coverage, for that sort of stuff.
So here's the thing that just floors me, right? We have satellites around Mars right now. But we don't have a satellite around the moon, so that we're going to have the blackout period when they go on the far side of the moon.
Yeah, indeed.
Why don't we have a satellite around a couple, so that you have full radio coverage or transmission coverage the whole time?
Well, maybe when they do a live stream, you can tune in and ask that question. Who knows? Audience participation. I don't know whether they're going to do that, but I'm enjoying on the Artemis Tracker website, which is made by a third party. It's not made by NASA. The person who's got their email address and their Mastodon handle at the very end there, Jacob Rossin, and he's sharing it with the world. And I'm enjoying especially the timeline section, which talks through the individual stages. So as we're recording on Friday, the 3rd of April, they will be on the far side of the moon in that communications blackout for about 30 to 50 minutes on April the 7th. So that's in 3 days and 5 hours from now.
Tuesday?
April
Tuesday?
Yeah,
Tuesday.
I think so. Yes. And this is interesting. I read this too. They'll be taking photographs of the dark side of the moon based upon the training that they had with geologists here on Earth. And one of the cameras that they'll be using to take those photographs with will be an iPhone camera, which I thought was rather intriguing use for consumer technology being used for that sort of thing, not in addition to the other cameras, of course, that they're going to have.
I'm wondering, because most things on a spacecraft have to be rated, right, for appropriate usage in space,
radiation and all that hardening.
I'm wondering if they have a special version of iOS on there that allows them to turn off all of Apple's photo processing, so that the images captured are pure censored images and not the adjustments, right? Because most modern cell phone cameras have some level of graphics pipeline that clean up and adjust the image.
Well, so that's what Halide does, right? You can just use one of the third-party apps to turn it all off.
Good point.
So,
I would want to see that. If I were one of those geologists asking them to take pictures, I would say, use this app, because I don't want any of that image processing.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a neat link to the fact that we have a story about the usage of the iPhones in space from Digital Trends, showing the astronauts goofing around with them and trying them out in zero gravity and so on.
I bet you they don't have to worry about breaking the glass on them when they fall, because they don't fall.
But as it says here, it makes that seeing them playing around with an iPhone on a moon mission makes it just feel more real, right? It does, and I think that's true. We got sufficiently far from, although Michael, your anecdote about being woken up for the original launch, you got sufficiently far from that event that this is a real event again. It's really thrilling, I have to say, and fascinating to think about the science and the things that we've added to our technical toolbox and our human toolbox since we first went there. There's a couple of other links we've got. We've got one from Gizmodo, 5 things you may have missed during NASA's historic launch. Anything that either of you thought was particularly interesting from that list of 5 things?
Well, I loved the examples here of the card game, especially. So, the idea of getting past the bad luck for the mission commander. So when they lose, then they're ready to go. So that I thought that was cool. I hadn't known about that before. And this is a shakedown cruise, if you will, for the capsule and for the spacecraft, and that's why they went around the Earth a couple of times to make sure everything was going to be okay before heading towards the moon. And a number of things didn't go so well, right? There were some outages for certain technology stacks. We'll get to that in a second. And there were some hardware issues as well that had to be fixed. And Christina
jiggle the handle.
Christina had to be the one who had to go fix that. And like a science and math grad, she managed to do that very well. So that was kind of cool too. So I like that.
Yeah, it's funny. I think we talked about this before. I had a colleague of mine when I was getting my MBA who did a lot of work with NASA video stuff, and I've got like these stacks of DVDs of raw footage from the early launches. And so a lot of the thing about the baskets, the drop away baskets, right, for the emergency people or the people working on it and stuff like that, were kind of displayed in some of those early videos because they had to have something like that before, and just from a safety perspective, I think it's interesting to have listicles like this. I do find it more interesting around the just how the crew does things and why certain things are done, and I think, Andy, to your point, it is kind of exciting.
Yeah.
It really is kind of exciting.
And of course, also mundane.
Yeah, at the same time. Because that's what kind of killed off the shuttle, right? It became too mundane. Nobody watched it anymore. Nobody cared.
Well, there's one thing, the last thing from this listicle, as you call it. I think it's quite an interesting one. It's quite short as well. Is the fact that this is the first mission where they've sent a toilet beyond low Earth orbit, and previously they haven't actually been able to have a toilet on the ships,
which is such an uncomfortable flight.
It is. It's a weird thing to talk about, but it's interesting that they've and they had a problem with it and they managed to fix it. But beyond that, other sort of more mundane real life things is that they had a problem, and this was caught on the live stream with Microsoft Outlook on one of the tablets on board, where they were saying, I've got 2 copies of Microsoft Outlook running here, and neither of them actually work, and they had to. Mission Control had to remote in to the surface and fix that.
That's a serious remote.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. And the point of that particular article that you found on it too was the commercial off the shelf element, right, of the software was part of the structure, and it makes it more real, it makes it more relatable, again, to the point, and keeps the costs down here too. So you have to wonder too that the hardware, like you were saying, Michael, had to be specially hardened as well to sustain any radiation. So you got to wonder about the iPhones. Were they that way too, or are they just consumer iPhones and that was that? As well as, was there anything special about the Outlook software that needed to go through special rating or special coding to be available for space as well?
Well, so I can't remember if it was 2006, 2008, 2010, one of those time periods where NASA made a strategic decision to try to shift as much of its work to commercial off-the-shelf technology to reduce cost. And now we're starting to see some of the fruits of that labor, because originally a lot of the stuff failed, but they were like, well, it's a lot cheaper, but it failed, and we'll try the next thing. And so I remember reading about that years ago in Air and Space magazine, and Planetary Society had discussions on this, etc. And it's not necessarily uniquely hardened; it's just certified for used in a hardened environment, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing articles, I want to say this past summer, talking about, iPhones being able to handle certain temperature ranges and other kind of extreme conditions, which may have been preparatory tests for spaceflight.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. So for those of you who've now sped through all of this, because you're like not necessarily as space geeky as the three of us, we've got a couple other stories to kind of touch on briefly. And Andy, you found one relating to LinkedIn that we were intrigued by.
This was trending on Mastodon yesterday, and it was quite interesting to me because it highlighted a bunch of stuff that I wasn't aware of. Apparently, this was discovered or started to be publicized at the end of last year. So there is a website called browsergate.eu. So it's specifically written from an EU law perspective, specifically around rules and laws such as the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, and the Digital Services and Digital Markets Act. And the allegation and demonstration here is that when you visit LinkedIn using a Chrome-based browser, not using other browsers necessarily, but definitely using Chromium browsers, it runs a piece of code that is in a format called Webpack, which is essentially a way of zipping up a load of code that runs in the background on your browser. And what that is doing behind the scenes, that code, is it profiles your browser. And this is something that a lot of companies do to figure out what extensions you're running or things they can do to, like, now that they're not allowed to drop cookies, they do other things like, okay, well, how can we fingerprint this browser? So they do things like looking up the list of extensions that you could install, because there's a good chance that that's unique to your setup. The problem here is not that they're doing that specifically, because that is, as I mentioned, quite a common thing. There are two other
it's bad enough.
It is not great, but there are two other elements to this. LinkedIn knows who you are, right? You are there as an identified real name human with your employer and job title known, right? So there is no anonymity there. The second element is that they have a database of extensions they specifically scan for. And within that database of extensions, not only do they have a bunch of extensions that are related to competitors to, let's say, LinkedIn or their corporate owner. So knowing whether you're using, let's say, some Salesforce extensions or some whatever other browser extensions you might be using for your corporate tools. So they have a fairly good idea of the kinds of tools that you use, but they're also looking for browser extensions that might give them indications of religious, political, or accessibility preferences, which is, to my mind, one of the most worrying and upsetting elements of this whole thing. So there is evidently now a lawsuit that is underway, has been at least filed, to take this to task. There's an argument this is a big mass breach of data, personal information, which is regulated under EU law, not under all worldwide law. They do also call out the UK here, because the UK retains elements of the GDPR. They also claim that this is corporate espionage, because they are scanning for products that compete with existing tools, Apollo, Lusher, ZoomInfo, etc., so they can map which companies use which competitor products. That was a very long way of saying this is a fairly serious website, and if you are interested in these topics, as I know Michael Rowe is in particular, then it's something that will should make you concerned.
Yeah, I was, when we first started talking about this before the show, I had not seen this article or the website. I knew about browser fingerprinting, and I was going to say, well, what are they really doing? They're just doing browser fingerprinting. Everybody does that, blah, 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 blah. And as we talked about it, it gets just scarier and scarier, and shows what a lack of a privacy law has on the implications of the users of various tools. And these are tools, I mean, right now, if you're not on LinkedIn, you have a negative advantage to trying to find a job. And so they're taking advantage of a market position. I think the phrase used in the article is it's considered a gatekeeper. underneath the European laws.
Yes.
And that.
Well,
that's
so
huge.
Microsoft is specifically treated as a gatekeeper under the Digital Markets Act because of their market penetration and size. Yes, and it also does talk about the fact that the GDPR affects all 27 EU member states. At least 3 other countries then apply the GDPR because they're part of a European agreement, and then the UK also retains it, and Switzerland also. So there's, a lot of people covered by this. So when we talk about privacy laws, they do exist in these and across a wide swathe of the human population, but not all of them.
And almost 2,000 of the scanned targeted extensions are workflow-based extensions, which I find very interesting from the standpoint of what data can you glean based off of the existence of those and the role of the person who's using them. And given that data that they can collect and roll and stuff, I find it more than disconcerting, but I'm actually going to send this to Steve Gibson from Security Now and get his perspective, because he's been looking at these types of things across other security breaches. And when you talk about from a purely security perspective, not right or wrong, right? From this pure security perspective, the amount of data that they're collecting makes them an even richer target for people who want to get additional information on you and do, security breaches. So interesting. Thank you, Andy, for sharing this one. I'm going to spend more time reviewing it.
So kind of related to that conversation is an article from TechDirt that's taking and kind of parsing out the Bernie Sanders and Claude conversation from Anthropic, and the conversation where Senator Sanders is conversing with the chatbot Claude is really quite intriguing. And it's funny that there's a quote in this article that does talk to the fact of Sanders asking a question about what Claude thinks about how much information that AI is collecting on people. And Claude's response is very similar initially to what Michael, you and Andy were just talking about. At least according to the article. I haven't watched the video, but so I have to. No. I just a little tiny bit of it to start.
It's worth watching. This is a couple of weeks old, and as listeners, regular listeners will know, we've had a couple of weeks without a show, so we've kind of rolled up a few things that we'd missed to talk about, and this one comes from the middle of March, or around the 20th of March. Bernie Sanders uploaded a video to YouTube. It's a video of him sitting in a chair with an iPhone or a phone held in front of him on a tripod, with the Claude app running, and he then goes on to question Claude about AI privacy and data collection in audio. And this went viral. I think it's quite a good video, but as I watched it, I was saying to my wife that actually it was a problematic video, and indeed this article from TechDirt, I beg your pardon, raises the same thing. So he doesn't. You can ask a question, but you're likely to get back an answer which reinforces your belief system.
Yes. Because
of the way that you ask the question and the kind of thing you're asking and the way that you're doing that. Specifically at the end, Sanders posits a counterpoint to Claude and basically says, well, the problem is with what you're saying, the AI companies are pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into the process so that the safeguards aren't taking place. And of course, Claude then goes, oh, yes, you're absolutely right. Literally, it's the classic Claude response. You're absolutely right, which is kind of a meme at this point. And it is just this self-reinforcing agreement with a framing that you give the AI tool. So it is interesting. I think, but unfortunately, I think it is a slight misrepresentation, or could be a misrepresentation of some of the facts of the situation.
AI is the ultimate improv partner.
Yes. And exactly.
Yes, you're
right.
absolutely right. And
well, so the other thing that happened this week, is that a bunch of the Claude source code was leaked, and people discovered, or claimed to have discovered, that a lot of it has been itself vibe coded. Of course, they use Claude to code Claude. And
they've said that they were doing that for the last
exactly.
release.
They've said that, and there's a lot of massive if statements in there, and there's a lot of other things, and they've also used it to tease out what some of the things that Anthropic might be about to launch, including this so-called Tamagotchi style pet game or pet companion that you can play with within Claude, which can have, looping back to our privacy question, can have a bunch of related behaviors in terms of what they're tracking and discovering about you.
One of the interesting things, I've been doing a lot of AI work in the day job, obviously, like most companies nowadays, and we talked about this a year ago, maybe even more than that. The sycophant nature of the responses sometimes just drives me nuts, especially when you go, no, that's wrong. And it goes, you're absolutely right. I'm wrong. And this is why. Right. And so, I just thought that was funny in this. But the leak of the source code, this is one of those ones I remember reading the article about how it was, quote, leaked, right? Due to the way they, I believe, packaged the code, and that released the ability for you to go reverse your way back into where the code was. But I find it interesting that we are looking at improving, and I tweeted about this week. We're speeding up the development of stuff, and saying for it to be done right, we got to have humans to review it, right? So you don't have these problems. But we can't speed up the humans reviewing it. And the people that are skilled enough to do the reviewing it, we've been reducing the need for them. So we're cutting down the base of the people who can do the reviewing, but speeding up the input going in. So we're shifting a bottleneck of innovation into a place that's going to have, I personally think, a huge problem. Whether it's a breaking point or a transitional change to how we do things, I don't know yet, but we're shifting that over with this, and I do find it very interesting right now. And it's good to live in interesting times.
I think shifting to the end of the show, there's one more thing we were going to talk about in the show notes this time, was a story on Gizmodo about a QR code that is so teeny that you can't even really see it because it's smaller than the size of a bacterium. But it's really interesting in the sense that is a form of data storage. And so if you can stack tons of these tiny little QR codes, then or etch them in this scale into a stable medium, you could store something like, I think the article talks about 2 terabytes of data in the size of a single A4 page, which is huge.
We
tiny.
Talk a lot about.
Yes, it's huge or tiny. Yes, exactly. It's tiny.
Talked a lot about security stuff here and tracking and stuff, and all I could think of when I read this article is that little tiny thing could have huge amount of tracking information about you and stored on something that you can't see.
No. You need to get the huge amount of tracking information. You need a sheet of A4 paper with all of that etched onto it. And that should be stuck on your chest or somewhere attached to your body.
Just get shirts with that imprinted on it. Right?
And that could, I could just scan you and it would tell me all about you.
Yes. Very cool.
Oh, and
I think
I remember the thing I was going to mention earlier in the show, which was that we were talking about, briefly talking about jobs. And I need one. So if anybody has one for someone with my knowledge, skills, and experience, then beginning May, I will be very open to that, and we should talk soon. Thank you.
Yes, and if you have any feedback, but especially that, you can reach Andy directly on many different locations. Andy, you have a website that will be linked in the show notes where people can reach you directly. Or you can reach out to us at our website, gamesatwork.biz, or on Mastodon at mastodon.social / gamesatwork.
Yeah. _biz.
.biz?
Yeah.
_biz. This underscore.
We've been doing this for a while. We're beginning to forget.
Yeah. Just go to the website. You'll find us. It'll help.
We would love to hear from you. And don't forget, rate, subscribe, blah, blah, blah.
Please see you, everybody.
See ya.
Thanks. Bye. You've been listening to GamesAtWork.biz, the podcast about gaming, technology, and play. We are part of the Blueberry Podcasting Network, and would like to thank the band Random Encounters for their song, Big Blue. You can follow us at our website at GamesAtWork.biz.